So what's really going on here is that there's an underlying thesis that could be said more clearly. Um, Again, it'd be a matter of if you wanted to sort of refine or sharpen this sentence, you want to work on this should be able. It should really be something more like, let me write a different version of this. Since they are able to get married legally in 2020, the year I'm making this video, it would make more sense to say gay marriage should be maintained as a right in the United States. Right? And so there, and then the opposite of that would be like gay marriage should not be maintained as a right, or gay marriage should be rescinded as a right in the US. Okay? And all right, and let me take this one. Okay. So this one is a good example of saying more than you need to in a thesis sentence. The basic thesis is this: abortions should be legal for women. Now, I would, they already are legal in all 50 states at the federal level, so I would change this to abortion should be maintained as a legal right for women. That would make more sense because it would be referring to the future, right? And saying that we already have this right in the country, but it should be maintained into the future. Okay? Now, so this is a perfectly acceptable thesis sentence. You could do its opposite, a con: abortion should be abolished as a legal right for women, or should not be maintained as a legal right for women. Both of those papers are completely, standard and fine topics for an essay. What I wanted to draw attention to is this. This sentence, this is actually a good point of evidence for the pro-abortion argument, but it does not need to be included in the thesis sentence, right? This should be one of your, or I'll go down here, one of your 1, 2, 3 points of evidence. Because this is arguing that if abortion was made illegal, people would still have abortions, but it would be in more risky medical facilities, resulting in fatalities. So that would be a point of evidence for this argument, right? And then this part is, again, it's not really part of the thesis sentence. I would say you could find a way to express this as a point of evidence. That, this idea that the federal government doesn't have a say in the autonomy of a woman's body. Okay. That would really be one of the evidence points for this thesis. Okay. Right. School uniforms. Okay. I like this one because I think it needs work, but it is actually a very well-written sentence. I really don't want to knock the writer at all because this is a nicely written sentence. I'll just read it out loud. School uniforms, one second. School uniforms may be an upfront cost for families, but they eradicate the visual differences in income between students and provide a more egalitarian atmosphere at school. This is actually, strangely enough, this thesis sentence is made up of points of evidence rather than the thesis sentence itself. Does that make sense? The thesis sentence of this would be something like, school uniforms have numerous positive effects on students and the school, on students. Yeah, right there. Maybe that's simple and perfect enough. I don't even have to mention the school. School uniforms have numerous positive effects on students. Okay. Again, you do not need to put your evidence points in your thesis sentence. You do not need to provide the reasons why you think it's true. You just need to say, this is what I think is true. Could we, well, let's put this through the pro and con test. School uniforms have numerous negative effects on students. Perfect. Both of those are fine sentences that you could write an essay about. So back to this idea of how this sentence is kind of made up of evidence points more than the thesis sentence itself, which is kind of hidden behind it. One, well, let me start with this. Eradicate visual differences in income. It's a good point of evidence for this argument. Provide more egalitarian atmosphere. In a way, this is kind of a specific example of this. But, okay, just for the sake of moving this forward, we'll say these are 2 points of evidence. And then we have this part, which is kind of actually what I've been calling the nod to the opponent, right? So, this could be attached here. Something like this. Although school uniforms are an additional expense for families, they have numerous positive effects on students. And I'll correct my typo there. Although school uniforms are an additional expense for families, they have numerous positive effects on students. Okay, that works. So I don't know if I would necessarily go for including this nod to the opponent here. I think it's a really interesting idea to bring into the essay at some point in the main body of the essay, because it does that thing that I called giving the nod to the opponent. It says, although, I understand that the families have to kick up or throw up a few more extra bucks at the beginning of the school year. It's an expense, and it's an expense that not all public schools ask of the families. It could be a difficult expense for poorer families. Those are all real concerns. But, and then you bring it back to your argument, but the positive effects of uniforms outweigh that negative. And then in the rest of the essay, you go on to show there's so many reasons why these uniforms do good things for the students and for the general life of the school. Does that make sense? So, again, this would be fine. I wouldn't say this is bad. I'm just not sure it's yet the time to introduce this nod to the opponent. And if I were writing this essay, I would keep it simple at the start with just school uniforms have numerous positive effects on students. And, this is a good thesis sentence because I just can tell right away there's going to be lots of stuff written on the internet about school uniforms. It's one of those topics that people love to debate. There's got to be studies on it. There's got to be a lot of journalism about it. So if you just Google this idea of school uniforms, you're gonna find a wealth of pieces of evidence that you can cite in your citations page and use easily. And contrast that with obviously these two topics, abortion and gay marriage. There's going to be tons of stuff, pro and con, on the internet. But then you get to something like Kraft mac and cheese is the cheesiest. What can you use as a source? again, there may have been a scientific study done about testing the literal cheesiness of Kraft mac and cheese, but are there going to be 3 such points of evidence? I don't know. It could be hard to find. So part of writing an essay, and then, okay, just to finish that thought, notice there's nothing on the internet about how this person feels about their girlfriend. It's simply a personal emotion, right? There are no scientific studies done on you and your girlfriend and how you feel about her, right? So that's why this topic just won't fly. So yeah, you can keep in mind as you choose topics to write about, you can ask yourself, is this something that people argue about a lot? Because if it is, there's going to be tons of stuff that's really easy to find on the internet, and your paper will kind of write itself. Someone might have seen, actually, I can't remember if I put this in a video or if, here, this will be the last one. I can't remember if this was a personal response to a student or if it was in a video, but there's a possible thesis sentence of this. Minimum wage should be raised in White River Junction, Vermont. Okay, and I have no idea if White River Junction has specific rules about minimum wage or if it just follows Vermont rules, or if Vermont follows federal rules. I think it doesn't actually. I think Vermont has higher minimum wage than whatever the federal law is. Right away, in going so specific, do you see how this is massively cut down on what you're going to be able to find with a Google search? Have there even been any articles written about minimum wage in White River Junction? Maybe something in the Valley News, right? Maybe 12 years ago, there was an article written about this. But think of the amount of material you would have access to if you just said minimum wage should be raised at the federal level in the United States. All of a sudden, you've gone from 1 or 2 articles to 2 million articles and studies about minimum wage across the country and whether, what it should be at the level of the government. So you can just save yourself some time by choosing things that other people talk about a lot versus much smaller, more obscure things. All right, I've rattled on enough, but I'm hoping that looking through these sentences gave people a little bit more clarity and a little bit more ability to not write a thesis sentence like this. Bye.